I am Dr. Kizzie Shako. I'm a forensic medical practitioner, and I am also the SGBV advisor to the Office of the Chief Justice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kizzie Shako, for this opportunity to engage and have a discussion on investing in women as we aim to observe International Women's Day against the backdrop of the STAJ SGBV Strategy. And at this juncture, perhaps I would like to ask you if you can introduce us to the SGBV Strategy to the best of your knowledge, so that we can also get a feel of what it's about before we dig deep into its content against the theme of investing in women to accelerate progress.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. The Sexual and Gender-Based Violence Court Strategy is anchored on the social transformation through access to justice vision of the judiciary, which is aimed at, one of the things it's aimed at is encouraging or promoting inclusive society. And so the SGBV Court Strategy is born from some of the barriers that have been identified when it comes to accessing justice for survivors of SGBV. And so the strategy aims to create an environment that allows survivors or victims to adequately participate in their cases to access justice. And that is really what the SGBV Court Strategy is about. The objectives include reducing bureaucracy, enhancing accountability, holding perpetrators accountable, reducing the trauma or re-traumatization that survivors sometimes face, and expediting cases so that cases don't take so long in court processes, which results in victim fatigue and further trauma. So that's generally what the SGBV Court Strategy is about, to enhance survivor participation in court and to enhance access to justice for survivors.
Well, thank you so much for that comprehensive introduction to the strategy. And if I may ask, I understand that in the strategy's executive summary, specialized SGBV courts have highlighted. I'd just like to get your insight on how the SGBV courts contribute to investing in women as a human rights imperative and as an important and pivotal step for building inclusive societies.
The establishment of the specialized SGBV courts represents a significant investment in women as a human rights imperative and a cornerstone for building inclusive societies by dedicating specific judicial resources and infrastructure to address SGBV cases. So what this means is that the judiciary has identified barriers to access to justice for women and girls. It is also known through research that globally SGBV affects women and girls disproportionately. And so most victims or survivors of SGBV are women and girls. And so how can we enhance their access to justice at the judiciary level? And so the judiciary has dedicated resources and infrastructure to address SGBV, hence the SGBV courts. And the strategy highlights these commitments and by prioritizing the protection of the rights of women and girls. And it also provides a platform for survivors to access justice in a safe, supportive, victim-centered, child-friendly environment, which thereby promotes their dignity and their gender equality and also the rule of law. And so that's basically how the specialized SGBV court strategy aims to enhance inclusive societies.
Oh, thank you so much for that informative response. And I understand then in building inclusive societies, we would also embed survivor-centered approaches. that prioritize the needs and priorities of women who have experienced SGBV. So would you please elaborate how this survivor-centered approach is spotlighted in the strategy and how then it will support in prioritizing the needs of women who have experienced SGBV?
When developing the SGBV Court strategy, a study was conducted, and as I mentioned earlier, one of the key barriers to access to justice is the trauma that survivors endure while seeking that justice, not only at one particular level, but across the entire chain of events within the criminal justice system. So at community level, medical, police, and so on. And one of the reasons that this re-traumatization occurs is because of the lack of knowledge across service providers in terms of how to address or handle a survivor of SGBV. There needs to be an understanding that SGBV cases are very intimate cases. They are very they touch the very heart of a person and their ability to be productive, and it affects their entire lives. Now, the SGBV Court strategy, in recognition of this particular barrier, aims to reduce the re-traumatization by enhancing a victim-centered approach, enhancing and stressing on the need for a trauma-informed approach, and a gender-sensitive approach towards handling survivors of SGBV. Now, what does this mean exactly? It means that from the minute a survivor gets to a court station, that the people who will be receiving this survivor at the gate, at the customer service desk, understand what trauma means and how best to assist these survivors. It means looking into issues such as the court infrastructure. We know that courts can be quite intimidating. So how can we reduce that intimidation to allow a survivor to be able to provide their testimony, for example? It means looking at training of judicial officers, training of judicial staff to ensure that they understand these trauma-informed approaches and to understand the impact of trauma on a person's ability to participate in their cases. It also refers to looking at the infrastructure of a court. How friendly is a court? Does it need to be, is there the opportunity for us to reconsider the manner in which a court is structured, such that survivors may not have to see the accused person, survivors may not have to sit next to accused persons or their allies. So the strategy refers to remodeling, where possible, a court to ensure that there are separate waiting bays, separate entrances and exits, the use of technology, adoption of technology, so that survivors may not really have to travel long distances to be part of their cases. It also allows for expert witnesses to give evidence in court without necessarily being within the court, which again addresses the issues around unnecessary adjournments and cases taking long, long delays. It also refers to having things as simple as changing the colors of the walls in a court to ensure that it's not intimidating. So the use of pastel colors or calming colors on walls, which especially affect children. Reorganization of the furniture so that the judicial officer is at the same level as a child when they're speaking is also proven to be less traumatic. So these are some of the strategic interventions that are highlighted in the strategy that are aimed at reducing the trauma that victims suffer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kizzie, for sharing that multifaceted approach that is also embedded in the strategy and in supporting the survivors or victims, say, of SGBV, and So if I may at this point ask you, how do the sensitization and awareness campaigns that are referred to in the strategy contribute to demystifying SGBV courts and to increasing public support for initiatives that are aimed at addressing gender-based violence?
Sensitization and awareness campaigns mentioned in the strategy contribute to demystifying SGBV courts and increasing public support for initiatives by raising awareness about the prevalence of SGBV, the impact, and the consequences of SGBV. We also have noted that several people don't even really understand what exactly SGBV is. Many survivors are not aware that they have been involved in an SGBV matter, or that what has occurred, the incident that they have endured is actually a crime. So it involves educating the public on what exactly constitutes SGBV in itself, and the services that are available for the public to pursue access to justice, or to pursue justice. And so this would enhance public support by ensuring the public has knowledge and information on the SGBV itself, and also how to access justice. This would also contribute to demystifying the specialized courts, because if the public is aware that there's a specialized SGBV court, then it serves to show the dedication and commitment of the judiciary towards addressing this particular vice. It also acts as a, kind of promotes zero tolerance to SGBV at the public level, and it helps to challenge harmful norms and stereotypes that have been in existence for decades, and promotes positive attitudes towards women and girls.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that insightful response. And so if I may ask at this point, besides to speak about actors who play a key role in addressing SGBV, and in even providing support to the victims of SGBV, if you can just bring us to light on this joint effort, like which actors, besides judicial officers, besides protection officers, who else is working towards delivering appropriate services? Who else are you involving, or are you engaged in delivering appropriate services to survivors of SGBV, in the need to also practice empathy and sensitivity in administering justice?
All right. So we know that the judiciary can only work within its mandate as the judiciary. However, this does not negate the opportunity to engage in partnerships and to work with other criminal justice sector service providers. So at the moment, the judiciary is now dealing with the specialized SGBV courts, but also across the other sectors, there is a lot of goodwill across the other sectors that is also aimed at addressing SGBV for purposes of prevention and response. So, for example, we have at the police level, the Polycare program, which is aimed at providing a one-stop shop for survivors of SGBV. There are gender desks at the police stations that are aimed at ensuring that the officers that receive SGBV cases can have the skills and the knowledge required to ensure a trauma-informed approach, child-friendly approaches, and victim-centered approaches towards the handling of these survivors. We also have at the Ministry of Health level, there is a lot of training is ongoing for the purposes of medical treatment and forensic evidence collection. In fact, 2 years ago, I believe there was a launch of the forensic evidence collection module and manual for medical practitioners, which is a very good step in the right direction. And then there's also the National Council on Administration of Justice, which is chaired by the Honorable Chief Justice. And the National Council on Administration of Justice hosts all the different criminal justice sector actors, and there is a committee on the review of laws and policies regarding sexual offenses and gender-based violence. Now, this shows that there's a lot of activity and a lot of goodwill and commitment from the different arms of government and different ministries and directorates to look into addressing the issues concerning sexual and gender-based violence. And a victim-centered approach is always key and highlighted very well in all of these different mechanisms, just to ensure that a survivor does not go through an entire process and comes out even more traumatized than they were before initiating the criminal justice response.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Shako, on that insightful response that shows the different actors and how they each complement each other. And even
I forgot to say something. Sorry.
Sure.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
There is a lot of support from development partners and civil society organizations towards enhancing access to justice as well, such as the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, among other development partners who support whether it's the development of training, curricula, development of, for example, at the SGBV Courts, practice directions, supporting the different and various committees to execute their mandates, just to ensure that the SGBV Courts have the relevant or necessary governance framework within which they can execute their mandate. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kizzie, for adding flesh to the point and for appreciating the development partners. I was alluding to the fact that even as there's a joint effort in this fight against SGBV and in support to SGBV survivors, I wanted to get your insight on how the strategy's implementation maneuvers around the bureaucracy that stems from having various actors involved in this noble quest to tackle SGBV, and how the strategy increases accountability that will then result to benefiting women who are seeking justice against SGBV cases, and how then that progress on addressing SGBV is tracked and how it is evaluated.
Okay, the strategies and implementation mechanism, which includes reduced bureaucracy, increased accountability, will benefit women seeking justice for SGBV cases by streamlining processes and improving access to services. As I had mentioned before, there is the adoption of virtual courts. One of the strategic interventions also includes looking into suitability for mobile courts. What would that require? Enhancing by promoting public awareness. Also, this further goes down to the grassroots level to inform the public on what the processes are, the procedures to get assistance from service providers. And so the strategy also will benefit women by streamlining processes and enhancing transparency and accountability. As I had also mentioned before, there is a committee anchored on the Office of the Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, whose task or terms of reference include, in a nutshell, developing a governance framework under which the SGBV court shall function. This looks into issues around what kind of cases will be heard within those courts, developing or modifying the case management system to address SGBV cases, because we know that SGBV cases have very unique features and unique aspects that don't fall into the cases just like any other case. So an SGBV matter may need to be heard or handled differently from any other kind of criminal case or civil case. And so there's a committee that's looking into these specific areas just to be able to enhance the accountability, to know exactly how are these cases going to be evaluated, how will they be tracked, do we track them and evaluate them on a quantitative basis or a qualitative basis? Is it possible for a judicial officer to hear 10 cases a day, or will that compromise the quality of services being provided at the court, which then itself kind of beats the purpose of the SGBV court? So there's a committee that's looking into how to adequately evaluate and track these cases. And also at the judiciary, there's a directorate that is tasked specifically with looking into tracking and evaluation of court cases. So by ensuring efficient and responsive systems, the strategy aims to improve women's access to justice, enhance the effectiveness of prevention and response efforts, and promotes the accountability for perpetrators of gender-based violence.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kizzie, for your kind response. May I seek your insight on any challenges that are experienced in implementing the strategy, and also what opportunities lie ahead, in the implementation of the strategy?
There are numerous opportunities for implementation of the strategy, such as the fact that the judiciary is present in all counties, it's present all over Kenya. Again, there is a lot of goodwill from the leadership to ensure that SGBV cases are addressed and in a timely manner, and in a manner that will actually ensure that the survivor feels that justice has been attained. There's also, a very robust M&E directorate which can look into the monitoring and evaluation of these cases. And there's also the there's the development of the SGBV curriculum for judicial officers. There's the development of the SGBV court practice directions. There was the launch of the SGBV court users committee. And so there's a lot of goodwill towards addressing these cases, and the judiciary already has structures in place to address SGBV cases. And as we speak, these cases are being heard and have been heard for several decades. The challenges exist in that, as I mentioned earlier, there are numerous actors that are involved in this management of SGBV cases before the judiciary is involved. And some issues involve like the delays in investigations, for example, or poorly handled evidence management, where now you have evidence that cannot be admissible in a court, which then may negatively impact the outcome of a case. The lack of legal aid, the lack of information on how procedures should be managed, or the procedures that should be undertaken. Issues around a heavy caseload, which means that even at prosecution level, it may be difficult to conduct an adequate needs assessment that is very necessary for a survivor to undergo, such that whatever issues they may have or challenges they may have towards participating in their cases, this can be addressed before they have to give their testimony. So those are just some of the challenges that exist. But as I have said earlier, the different ministries and sectors are addressing the challenges within their own docket so that we can have a seamless process in terms of access to justice for survivors of SGBV.
Women and girls are a significant part of our society, and they play a critical role towards the growth and development of our nation. Women and girls should be treated with respect, should be given equal opportunities towards the development of this country, and they should be able to do this in a violence-free and safe environment.